Find the area of the region bounded by the curves y equals sine x, y equals cosine x equals 0, and x equals pi over 2. So we're going to draw us a picture. And we know that we need to go from 0 to pi over 2. We'll go ahead and make a line right there. Let's go ahead and graph sine x. The sine of 0 is 0, and the sine of pi over 2 is 1. So that curve is going to look like that. And then we will graph cosine x, and the cosine of 0 is 1, and the cosine of pi over 2 is 0. So that one's going to look something like that. So what we're interested in is the area bounded by these curves, and so it looks like we've got two different pieces here, because the thing we have to be careful about is as we look from 0 to pi over 4, the cosine function is greater than the sine function. But then when we look from pi over 4 to pi over 2, the sine function is greater than the cosine function. So we're going to need to split this up, and we can do from 0 to pi over 4, which we know is that place right here. And on top we have cosine, so we're going to have cosine x minus sine x dx, and then we're going to add to that this second region, which is going to be integrating from pi over 4 to pi over 2, but now our sine function is greater, so we're going to put sine x minus cosine x. The other option would be that we could take this and take the negative of this function, and that would do the same thing. Let's go ahead then and compute the antiderivative. So we have sine x plus cosine x, and that would be evaluated from 0 to pi over 4. And we actually can see by symmetry that we could just go ahead then and multiply that by 2, and we would have this region. Or we could go ahead and compute this piece, various ways, but let's just use the symmetry because we know those two regions are equal to each other, so we'll just double what we get here. So we have 2 multiplied by the sine of pi over 4 minus the cosine of pi over 4, and then, whoops, that's plus, but then doing the lower limit we have minus the sine of 0 and minus the cosine of 0. We need to make sure we subtract both of those pieces because they are both part of the f of 0. Now sine of 0 is 0, cosine of 0 is 1, that's minus 1. Both sine of pi over 4 and cosine of pi over 4 are both square root 2 over 2, so we'll have 2 square root 2 over 2, and then we still have the 2 out in front. So it looks like our final answer is going to be 2 square roots of 2 minus 2 for this shaded region.